I'm Carl, 25 years old, and after an exhausting week at work, I realized I needed a break. I had been putting in long hours with barely any time for myself, and to be honest, I was completely drained. So when Saturday night arrived, I thought, why not go out and loosen up a bit? I wasn't planning anything extravagant, nothing wild. Just a simple night at a nightclub to have a few drinks, unwind, soak in the atmosphere, and see what the night had in store. There's this spot downtown I'd been to a couple of times before. It's not one of those loud, chaotic clubs, but rather a more relaxed place where people come to enjoy the music, dance, and simply have a good time. That sounded like exactly what I needed. I arrived around 1 a.m., and the place had a lively energy, though it wasn't overcrowded. The ambiance was mellow, with dim lighting and music that was just right. Not too overpowering, but enough to keep the vibe alive. I navigated through the crowd, made my way to the bar, ordered a drink, and settled into a seat on the side, just letting the atmosphere wash over me. It felt good to let the stress of the past week fade away. Honestly, I don't go out much. I wouldn't call myself a regular club goer. I typically prefer quieter nights with close friends, or even just staying in. But tonight, I needed to escape for a bit, and if I happened to see a few attractive women dancing, well, I won't deny that was part of the appeal. The crowd was a mix of people, some chatting, others laughing, and a few groups moving rhythmically on the dance floor. Everything felt pretty laid back. I sipped my drink, casually observing the scene, just trying to relax. I wasn't searching for anything in particular. I didn't come with the intention of meeting someone or making any deep connections. It was just me, the music, and the night. Then, suddenly, the lights dimmed, and the DJ's voice rang through the speakers, announcing a performance. At first, I didn't think much of it, just another typical show, probably some dancers putting on an act. But then, as one of them stepped onto the stage, I froze. It might sound ridiculous, but for a moment, I didn't even recognize her. She had her back turned, and all I could see was her silhouette, the shape of her body outlined by the dim lights. But when she finally turned to face the crowd, my heart skipped a beat. Standing right there in front of me was Lilia, my best friend's mother. I had to blink several times, convinced my eyes were deceiving me. It didn't add up. Lilia was always someone I knew to be elegant, composed, and highly respected. The thought of her being up there, dancing on that stage, completely clashed with the image I had of her. I quickly glanced around, not wanting to make it obvious that I was staring. I struggled to stay composed. I didn't want anyone to notice, especially not her. I kept telling myself, it's fine, it's just a performance, no big deal. But internally, I was in complete shock. The last thing I expected when I decided to go out tonight was to see Lilia performing at a nightclub. She was in her mid-40s, but she looked incredible, just as stunning as I remembered, if not more. There was a grace about her that was undeniable, even in that setting. I tried to convince myself that this was nothing unusual, that maybe it was just something she did for fun, but my mind wouldn't stop racing. What was she doing here? How had I never known about this? I was aware that Lilia had been through a lot in life. She had raised her son on her own ever since her husband walked out when he was just a baby. But this was completely unexpected. I didn't want to draw attention to myself, and I certainly didn't want to make things awkward for either of us. So I did what anyone in my position would do. I averted my gaze, pretending to be focused on something else. But no matter how hard I tried to look away, my eyes kept drifting back to her. Was this really happening? Was she truly up there, dancing? The performance continued for a few more minutes, yet it felt like time had slowed to a crawl. I couldn't wrap my head around what I was witnessing. Then finally, the music stopped, the lights brightened, and the moment ended. I kept my head down, avoiding eye contact with anyone. I didn't want to attract attention, but I couldn't shake the image of Lilia on that stage. Something about it felt off, even though I couldn't quite put my finger on why. The night was still young, but a strange uneasiness had settled over me. I kept replaying what had just happened, trying to make sense of it, but the more I thought about it, the more surreal it seemed. I had no idea how to process any of it. After a few more drinks, I figured it was probably best to call it a night and head home. I hadn't come here to get lost in my thoughts over something I couldn't explain. Just as I was about to turn my attention back to the bar, I suddenly felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned around, and to my complete astonishment, there she was. Lilia stood right in front of me, looking poised, self-assured, and just as breathtaking as ever. Her presence was warm, yet there was something different in her eyes, an underlying trace of uncertainty, or maybe even concern. I couldn't quite tell. "Carl," she spoke gently, her voice steady, but tinged with unease. "Can we talk for a moment?" My stomach dropped. I froze. What was I supposed to say? I tried to keep my face neutral, but inside, my thoughts were in complete turmoil. My thoughts were racing, and I couldn't decide whether to feel embarrassed, surprised, or maybe even a bit confused. I definitely didn't want to cause a scene, so I simply nodded. "Sure, Lilia. What's going on?" We moved to a quieter corner away from the bar, though the music still thumped loudly in the background. It wasn't as overwhelming here, but the noise was still present. She took a deep breath before speaking, trying to collect her thoughts. "Look, I know this probably seems odd to you," she began, her eyes briefly glancing at the floor. "I never expected to bump into you like this. I've been doing this for a while now, but I keep it to myself. It's something I do for me, you know. It helps me unwind and feel alive again." I was still trying to wrap my head around what she was saying, but I nodded. I didn't want her to feel uncomfortable. She was being open, and I could tell it wasn't easy for her. "I understand," I said, trying to sound calm, though I was still processing what she'd said. "I mean, it's your life, Lilia. I didn't expect it, but if it makes you happy, then that's what matters." She gave a small, thankful smile, though there was still something weighing on her. I don't want anyone to find out about this," she whispered, looking around as if to make sure no one else could overhear. I've kept it private for a reason. It's not about anyone else. I don't want my son or anyone else to know. I've kept it a secret for years. It's just my thing, you know? Hearing her speak so seriously made me realize how important this was to her. This wasn't a spur of the moment decision. Lilia had clearly put a lot of thought into this, and I could see the emotion in her eyes. This was no easy thing for her. I won't tell anyone, I reassured her. You don't have to worry about that. I mean, I get it. You're entitled to your privacy. She gave a small, grateful nod, though I could tell she was still carrying a heavy weight. Thank you, Carl, she said softly. You're one of the few people I can trust. Her words surprised me, but I could tell she meant it. It was almost as if she needed reassurance, someone to understand her. Of course, I replied. I won't say anything. It's just between us. There was a short silence, and I could see she was trying to find the right words to say next. After a long pause, she stepped closer to me, her gaze softening. I could sense her vulnerability in that moment. I don't know why I'm telling you this, Carl, she said almost to herself. But I guess I feel like I need someone to talk to, someone who won't judge me. I nodded again, not sure how to respond. I never imagined I'd be having this conversation with Lilia, but I respected her honesty. And Carl, she added, her voice gentler now, I just want to thank you for being understanding. Not many people would be. You have no idea how much that means to me. I was about to reply, to offer some comforting words, but before I could, she leaned in slightly and, to my surprise, kissed me lightly on the cheek. It was quick, almost like a gesture of thanks, but it completely took me off guard. Thank you, she whispered, her breath warm against my skin. I really needed that. I stood there, stunned, as she pulled away. She reached into her pocket, pulled out a small folded note, and handed it to me. Here, she said quietly, her expression now more serious. Take this if you ever want to talk, or if you need anything. You can call me. I looked at the note for a moment, unsure whether to open it then or leave it be. But Lilia was already walking away, giving me a small, somewhat nervous smile before she disappeared into the crowd. I stood there for a few moments, holding the note, still trying to process everything that had just happened. What just took place? I was still trying to make sense of it. Lilia, my best friend's mom, had just kissed me on the cheek, handed me her number, and walked away without saying another word. It was a lot to take in. My mind was racing. Should I open the note? Should I forget about this whole thing? The weight of the situation pressed down on me. It was strange, unexpected, and I didn't know what to do with this new information. But I couldn't stand there forever, so I pocketed the note, finished my drink, and left the club. The entire ride home, I couldn't stop thinking about Lilia. She wasn't just my best friend's mom anymore. She was a woman with her own life, her own struggles. She was someone who needed someone to talk to, someone who had been carrying a burden for a long time. When I got home, I tossed my keys onto the counter, slipped off my shoes, and collapsed onto the couch. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I took it out, expecting a message, but there was nothing. In a way, I was relieved, but then I remembered the note I had. I stared at the folded paper for a while, unsure of what to do. I wasn't certain what would happen if I called her, but something inside me told me this was not something I could just push aside. I had to take action. Perhaps it was curiosity, maybe guilt, but whatever it was, I felt the need to follow through. Finally, I unfolded the paper and looked at the number written on it. It felt surreal, almost too unreal to be true. Lilia's number, just a simple piece of paper, yet it felt like the weight of the world rested on it. I wasn't sure what I would say, but I figured if I didn't call now, I might never get the chance again. Taking a deep breath, I dialed the number. The phone rang, and I immediately felt a knot in my stomach. It wasn't like calling a stranger. It felt like calling someone I knew, someone who had been in my life for so long. But things were different now. This wasn't just a casual conversation. Emotions were involved. After a few rings, Lilia picked up. Her voice was calm, but I could tell she was surprised. "Carl?" she asked, her tone uncertain. "Is everything okay?" I paused for a moment before responding. "Yeah, it's me," I said, trying to sound casual, though my voice still wavered a bit. "I got your note. I just wanted to check in." There was a short silence on the other end before she sighed softly. "I'm glad you called," she said. "I wasn't sure if you would. I didn't want to pressure you into anything, but I'm really glad you did." "Of course," I replied. "I just wasn't sure what to think after, well, everything that happened." Another pause, and then she spoke again, her voice quieter now. "I understand. I'm sure it was a shock. I never meant for you to see me like that, Carl. But the truth is, I needed to talk to someone. I've been alone for so long, and it's been hard carrying everything by myself." Her words hit me like a wave. I hadn't expected her to open up like that, but it made sense in a way. I'd known her for years, but I had never really known her like this. So vulnerable, so raw. "I get it," I said, feeling sympathy for her. "It must have been tough. I didn't know any of this was going on with you. I mean, I always thought of you as, Lilia, my friend's mom. I never really thought about your life beyond that." She chuckled softly. "Yeah, I know what you mean. For years, that's all I've been to everyone. Lilia, Jake's friend's mom. But there's so much more to me than that. And it's been hard, Carl. So hard. My husband left when Jake was just 2 months old, and since then, I've had to do everything on my own. Raising him, taking care of everything. All by myself. It took a toll on me. But dancing is the one thing that's kept me sane." I could hear the emotion in her voice, how she struggled to keep it together. It was clear she had been through a lot, and the weight of those years was catching up to her. "I didn't know," I said, feeling genuinely sorry for her. "It sounds like you've been through hell." Lilia let out a shaky breath. "It's not easy, Carl. But dancing gave me a purpose. It gave me something to hold on to when everything else was falling apart. It's my escape." my way of taking back control of my life. I felt a surge of admiration for her. She had gone through so much, yet somehow she had managed to hold herself together in ways most people couldn't. I now understood why she had chosen that path, and despite the shock of seeing her at the club, I found myself understanding it in a way I hadn't before. "You've been incredibly strong," I said, my respect for her growing. "I'm glad you have something that makes you happy." There was a long pause before she spoke again. "Thank you, Carl. That means more to me than you know." In that moment, I realized something. This wasn't just about the kiss or the strange situation at the club. It was about two people connecting on a deeper level, understanding each other's pain, struggles, and needs. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was truly understanding Lilia. The days after my phone call with Lilia seemed to drag on, moving in slow motion. We talked every few days, casual at first, about the weather, small talk, nothing too serious. But under those simple exchanges, I felt something changing. There was a connection between us, one that was hard to define, yet impossible to ignore. Despite my attempts to keep things light, there was always this underlying tension when we spoke, like we were both avoiding something unspoken. We agreed to meet for coffee one afternoon. It wasn't a date, or at least that's what I told myself. It was just two people talking, two people who understood each other in a way no one else did. Lilia had been through so much, and I was starting to realize that I no longer saw her as just my best friend's mom. She was a woman with her own complexities, struggles, and needs. I arrived at the small cafe first, nervously checking my watch as I waited for her. I tried to focus on the book in front of me, but my thoughts kept drifting back to her. What would it be like to sit down and talk to her face to face? After everything that had transpired, I wondered if things would feel any different when Lilia walked in. My heart skipped a beat as soon as I saw her. She looked just as stunning as always. Her dark hair was neatly tied back into a ponytail, and she wore a simple yet graceful dress that made her appear much younger than her years. She had always been beautiful, but now, sitting across from her in this setting, she seemed altered, more vulnerable somehow, and that made her even more intriguing. "Hey, Carl," she greeted me with a warm smile, settling into the seat across from me. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." "No, not at all," I responded, attempting to sound nonchalant, though my voice came out more trembly than I intended. "I'm just happy we could meet." We both shared an awkward smile for a moment before she spoke again, her tone softer this time. "I've been thinking a lot about everything, about the other night, about what we talked about on the phone," she said. "I'm glad you called. I didn't want you to think I was just doing something reckless." I nodded, understanding what she meant. "It's been a lot to process, honestly, but I'm glad you felt like you could talk to me. I know it's not easy, and I don't want to make you uncomfortable about anything." Lilia looked down at her coffee, her fingers slowly tracing the rim of the cup. I've never really talked to anyone about this, you know, about how tough things have been for me. Being alone, raising Jake, working. It's been a lot. I don't regret it, but sometimes I wonder if I've missed out on something. Maybe even a chance at something more. I swallowed, trying not to let my emotions show. But her words hit me hard. She had always been so strong and independent. But now, under it all, I saw a vulnerability I hadn't noticed before. Lilia, I said, my voice quieter now. I think you've done an amazing job. Seriously. Raising Jake, handling everything on your own. It's more than most people could ever manage. She smiled gently, meeting my gaze. Thank you, Carl. That really means a lot. The conversation continued in a similar way, with us talking about life, our pasts, what we missed, and what we hoped for. It was easy to talk to her, so much easier than I had expected. We found ourselves laughing more than we had in ages, both of us letting our guards down little by little. At some point, I realized just how much I was enjoying her company, but there was this lingering fear in the back of my mind. What if this turned into something more? What if the feelings we were both starting to develop went beyond friendship? There was no denying the connection we shared, but the age gap was something to consider, not to mention the fact that she was Jake's mother. It felt like we were walking a tightrope, trying to maintain balance without falling off. I looked at her, and for the first time in a long while, I felt deeply conflicted. I admired her, respected her, and honestly, I was starting to care for her in a way I hadn't anticipated. But what did that mean? Could something happen between us? Would we allow it? As if reading my mind, Lilia spoke again, her voice now more serious. I know this might be complicated. I mean, we both know the situation. You're Jake's friend, and well, I'm older. I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but there's something between us, isn't there? I nodded slowly, my heart racing. Yeah, there is something, but I don't know what to do with it. I mean, you're right, it's complicated. I've never thought of you this way before, and now I don't even know what to call it. Lilia took a deep breath, her eyes reflecting deep thought. I feel the same way. I've spent so much of my life focusing on everyone else, on Jake, on work, on making sure everything was just right. But somewhere along the way, I stopped thinking about what I wanted, and I'm not sure if I'm ready for anything right now, but I can't ignore how I feel. There was a heavy truth hanging between us. We were both afraid of where this could lead, afraid of what others might think, afraid of the unknown. But there was no denying that something was slowly growing between us. And for once, neither of us was shying away from it. We were simply trying to figure out what to do next. As we sat there in that quiet cafe, our eyes met in a silent understanding. I knew one thing for certain. We couldn't keep pretending nothing was happening between us. How we navigated this What we chose to do next would depend on the decisions we made. We both knew those choices wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, we could figure it out together. A few weeks passed since our coffee date, and during that time, Lilia and I spoke far more than I had ever expected. We shared several late-night calls, texting in between, gradually revealing more about ourselves. To be honest, in the beginning, it felt like we were just friends, two people who had an unexpected connection. But as we continued to talk, that connection grew stronger, until one night it was impossible to ignore any longer. I remember the evening as if it were yesterday. It was late, almost midnight. I had been out with some friends, but my mind kept returning to Lilia. We had spoken earlier that day, and the conversation stayed with me. She had seemed distant that evening, almost as though she was holding something back, so I decided to give her a call. Maybe it was the alcohol or the weight of everything, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. I needed to talk to her. "Hey, Carl," her voice came through, a bit groggy but still warm. "What's up?" I tried to sound casual, though my heart was pounding. "Just wanted to check in, see how you're doing," I said. "You okay?" "I'm fine," she replied, a soft laugh in her tone. "Just thinking about us, about everything that's been going on." There it was again, the unspoken thing that had been hanging between us. We had both avoided naming it, but now there was no turning back. "Yeah," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. "Me too." We fell silent for a moment, neither of us knowing exactly how to proceed. But then it was as if the tension finally broke. "Carl," she said gently, "I've been doing a lot of thinking about this, about what we've been doing, and I don't know. I just don't want to deny it anymore." I didn't respond right away, my breath catching in my chest. Could she really be saying this? Could we truly be having this conversation? "I don't either," I finally managed to say. "I can't keep pretending like nothing's going on." There was a long pause before she spoke again. "I know it's complicated, the age difference, the fact that you're friends with my son. I understand all of that. But Carl, what we have isn't just some fleeting thing. This is real." My heart beat faster as I heard the sincerity in her voice. "I agree," I said, my voice calm now. "This feels real, and I don't want to pretend it's not happening anymore. But we have to be careful, right?" "Yeah," she agreed. "I don't want to hurt anyone, especially Jake, and I don't want anyone to notice us. But I also can't keep pretending that I don't feel what I feel." I understood. Neither of us wanted to cause trouble. We both knew how fragile the situation was, how complicated it could get if anyone found out. But that didn't change what was happening between us. It was more than just attraction. There was something deeper, something we both felt. And for the first time, it seemed like we were finally on the same page. "We'll keep it between us," I said, my voice soft but firm. "We'll figure it out. We don't need anyone else's judgment." She sighed gently on the other end, and I could hear the relief in her voice. "Thank you, Carl," she said. "I don't want anyone to know yet. I just want us to have some time to figure out what this means." "I agree," I replied. "We'll take it slow, keep it our secret, and we'll figure out if this is something real or just a passing moment." And with that, something changed between us. It was like the final barrier had come down. We both knew where this could lead, but neither of us was ready to let go of what we were feeling. We understood the risks, the complications, but it didn't matter. For once, we weren't afraid to be honest with each other. The next day, I met her again, this time at her apartment. When I arrived, there was no pretension, no awkwardness. It was just the two of us, two people who had finally admitted what was happening between them. Lilia opened the door with a smile, her eyes searching mine for any sign of doubt. But all I could do was smile back because, in that moment, I knew there was no turning back. We spent the evening talking, laughing, and sharing stories, and as the night went on, it became clear that we were both ready to take the next step. We weren't sure where it would lead, but we both knew one thing for certain. We couldn't deny the pull between us any longer. And so, with a single kiss, we surrendered to what we had both been avoiding. It was slow, gentle, but it was everything we had both been holding back. It marked the beginning of something new, something real, something no one could take from us. But we both knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, tough conversations, and maybe even heartache. But for now, all we had was this moment, this shared understanding. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like everything was exactly as it should be. As I held her close, I whispered, "Let's take it one step at a time." She smiled and kissed me again, and in that moment, I knew that no matter what came next, we would face it together. It's been over 6 months since that night, when Lilia and I first let go of our doubts. Since then, our relationship has grown in ways I never expected. What started as a tentative connection, full of uncertainty and secrecy, has become something more solid, more real, and through it all, we've learned one undeniable truth. We love each other. When I think back to how we began, two people who were almost afraid to acknowledge what was happening between them, I can't help. But we smiled step by step as each moment of doubt led us to this place, where we no longer had to conceal ourselves. We could finally be who we truly were, free from the fear of judgment or complications. The weeks and months following our decision to be together weren't always smooth. There were times of uncertainty, moments when the weight of our situation seemed too much to bear, threatening to tear us apart. Yet those moments were always short-lived, and each time they came, we always found our way back to one another. Lilia had transformed from a lover to a true partner. She became the one I turned to for advice, comfort, and everything else. Her strength, compassion, and wisdom had become an unwavering presence in my life. Despite our age differences and our pasts, it felt as though we were made for each other. We had grown close, closer than I ever imagined was possible. Our conversations, once filled with hesitation and questions, had turned effortless, brimming with laughter and love. We had found a rhythm, a way of being together that suited us both. With every passing day, it became more obvious that I was exactly where I was meant to be. One afternoon, as we sat together at a cafe, Lilia suggested an idea that had been on my mind for a few weeks. "Carl," she said, her eyes gleaming with excitement, "how would you feel about taking a little trip? Just the two of us. Somewhere warm, somewhere we can relax and truly enjoy ourselves, free from distractions." I looked at her, and the idea began to take root in my mind. The thought of getting away from everything, even if just for a short time, seemed exactly what we needed. Both of us had been working hard, and sometimes life felt like too much. But this seemed like the perfect opportunity to reset, to reconnect, and truly savor the present. "I think that's a great idea," I responded, a grin spreading across my face. "Somewhere warm, somewhere we can just be." And so, after a few days of planning, we booked a flight to a small island in the Caribbean. The thought of spending days by the ocean, basking in the sun, and simply being together filled me with excitement. The day of the trip arrived sooner than expected. We packed our bags, left our responsibilities behind, and boarded a flight to paradise. The flight was filled with anticipation, and when we landed on the island, it felt surreal. The air was warm, the sky clear, and everything about the place seemed perfect. We spent our days discovering the island, walking hand in hand along the beach, relishing the warmth of the sun on our skin. The nights were even better, dining under the stars, sipping wine, and talking about everything and nothing. It was as though time had slowed down, offering us the space to simply exist. I watched Lilia as she laughed, her eyes sparkling with joy. I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt so peaceful. There was something magical about the way she looked at me, as if we were the only two people in the world. It felt like we had created a little bubble, a safe place where we could love each other freely, without fear. One evening, as we sat on the beach, watching the sunset paint the sky with hues of orange and pink, Lilia turned to me. Her voice was soft, but her words carried great meaning. "Carl," she said, "I've never been this happy. I never thought I could feel this way again, especially after all I've been through. But with you, it's different. I feel like I've found a part of myself I didn't even know was missing." My heart swelled at her words. It wasn't just the beauty of the surroundings or the peace of the moment. It was her. It was the way she had become such an integral part of my life, the way I couldn't picture a future without her beside me. "I feel the same way," I responded, my voice thick with emotion. "I never thought I'd find someone like you. You've made me feel things I didn't know I could feel, and I never want to let go of that." We sat in silence for a while, letting the sound of the waves crashing against the shore fill the space between us. It felt perfect. It felt like the beginning of something new. That night, as we lay together in bed, I held her close, my heart full of gratitude and love. I knew our journey wasn't over. There would be challenges ahead. things we'd need to work through. But I also knew we could face them together. As the days passed, we both realized that this trip was more than just a vacation. It was the start of a new chapter in our lives, one where we didn't have to hide, where we could just be ourselves and continue building something real, something lasting. And as I kissed her goodnight under the stars, I whispered, "This is just the beginning, Lilia. I can't wait to see where this takes us." She smiled, her eyes filled with love and promise. "Neither can I, Carl. Neither can I." And with that, we drifted off to sleep, knowing that no matter what came next, we would face it together.